On va commencer. It is my privilege and pleasure to welcome you all to Copenhagen Business School and the conference on reinforcing EU climate leadership for improved security, competitiveness and prosperity. My name is Peter Møllgaard and I'm the president of Copenhagen Business School. I'm also the chair of the Danish Council on Climate Change, and we say today's topic is at the center of my work. We're living in challenging times, facing multiple crises that are defining our world today, and that will define our world for generations to come. These crises are intertwined, and this is important to recognize when we plan for the future of the European Union. The climate crisis is ever present. 2024 was the warmest year on record. We are already seeing consequences of climate change. They will increasingly affect our energy supply, our water and food supply, and our health. They can lead to conflicts over scarce resources, refugee flows, social inequality, and polarization, and loss of biodiversity, nature, which again has negative implications for climate change. This is not a future scenario, but a reality we face today. We also face geopolitical unrest, conflicts. I'm referring, for example, to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the armed conflicts in the Middle East and Africa, the trend towards increased nationalism, and the downgrading of the green transition, just to name a few. Geopolitical conflicts affect market conditions, global investments, and the adoption of international agreements, and they affect our general sense of security. The AI revolution involves great potential, but also risks. The explosive development of AI technologies could trigger dramatic changes in our living conditions and have far greater consequences than any other industrial revolution we have seen. The revolution could lead to groundbreaking opportunities to solve major societal problems, such as the climate crisis, but AI also involves risks that, if unchecked, could challenge our civilization, our perception of reality, and the international balance of power between states. No other technology can change so much for so many, so quickly. Finally, I want to highlight the potential crisis of a knowledge collapse. The global flow of information is rapidly becoming fragmented and contaminated by disinformation and misinformation. The value of science as the systemic pursuit of knowledge is called into question. This is making it harder to address the climate crisis, manage geopolitical conflicts, and control the AI revolution. Who and what should we believe? No decision is better than the information it is based on. So as the president of CBS and the chair of the Danish Council on Climate Change, I insist on the role of science in addressing these crises. Science can help us better understand their nature, but solving polycrisis is something we can't do on our own in the academic community. This is why Danish universities are working hard on developing effective and scalable solutions to complex problems in collaboration with a wide range of actors in society. And this is why climate councils across the world are working hard together and with national stakeholders on translating science into concrete advice on national climate policy. The focus of the European Commission has shifted slightly from the European Green Deal to the Clean Industrial Act. The green transition is not only about reducing our footprint on the planet, but also about an industrial transition that ensures jobs and a decent living for generations to come. Meanwhile, we can't postpone measures for bringing Europe on track towards climate neutrality in 2050 because we're worried about security, competitiveness, and prosperity today. A world where temperatures continue to rise and where we fail to bring down emissions in time is a world that is insecure where market conditions are poor and prosperity is limited. The crises are complex and connected, indeed a polycrisis. This recognition should be reflected in the solutions we present to develop Europe. Solid science-based advice is more important than ever to inform political decision-making. And as I represent both CBS and the Danish Council on Climate Change, I'm happy to reconfirm our commitment to deliver exactly that. Thank you very much. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Christian Ibsen, the director of CONCITO, the think tank, and also co-organizer of this fantastic event. Christian, the floor is yours.
Welcome. Good morning, guests, colleagues, and partners. My name is Christian Ibsen. I'm the CEO of CONCITO, and along with the Institute for European Environmental Policy, IEP, and Think Tank Europe, I have the honor to welcome you to this Think 2030 conference in Copenhagen, organized in association with the Danish EU presidency. And what a moment it is, at a time when climate leadership is not only about responsibility, but I believe also an opportunity and about courage. For me personally, there's no doubt the need for European climate leadership has never been greater than it is today. Our continent is the fastest warming region in the world. We are already feeling the effects of climate change, and at the same time we are facing rising geopolitical pressures and a competitiveness challenge that could undermine our future prosperity. Yet, this is also Europe's moment to rise. By taking a global leadership, Europe can tackle several challenges at once: safeguarding food and energy security, driving innovation, financing the green transition, and securing our competitive edge for generations to come. We have the knowledge, we have the technologies, and we have the talent. What we need now is ambitious leadership. This is about decisions that shape Europe towards 2040 and beyond. And it's not about sacrifice. We have so much to win. Today we bring together voices from both the private and public sector in areas essential to driving the green transition: industry, agriculture, finance, and energy. My hope is that the insights we share today can help drive the EU Union forward. So before handing over to our moderator, my friend Lykke Friis, I want to end by saying Europe has a historic and moral obligation to lead. We can't become a stronger, greener, and more united region. It's time to act. Welcome to you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Peter, for introducing the conference and for our great cooperation. A warm welcome also to those of you following us online. My name is Lykke Friis, which is a name that is completely impossible to pronounce for non-Danes. I remember, and some of you heard this story before, when I, as a minister, had to open COP16 in Cancun. And my poor colleague from Barbados, who had to basically introduce me, he was sort of doing like this, and just looked frustration at my name, and then just said, "And now I give the floor to Madam Lykke Friis from Denmark." Well, today, as you can see, I head Denmark's only think tank on European affairs, at the same time as I co-chair Europe's only pan-European think tank, the European Council on Foreign Relations. And today, as you heard, I have the great pleasure of moderating our plenary program. The background for our conference is pretty clear. The EU's climate policy is undergoing a rapid shift. A few years ago, it was quite normal to refer to climate policy as Europe's man on the moon moment. The argument behind that statement was another classic: there is no planet B. Last year, exactly on this day, there was a little hope, because a NASA scientist had picked up an unexpected companion, a new moon, So maybe we were in for more miracles. But unfortunately, the new moon was only there for a couple of weeks. So we're back to scratch, having to combat climate change, also because, as Peter just highlighted, science hasn't changed. But what has changed, as I hinted at a couple of moments ago, the language and politics around climate policy. The goal is no longer just to decarbonize a continent, itself a worthy ambition, but with a new commission at the helm and a political landscape in Europe that is significantly less green than when the previous commission first presented the European Green Deal in 2019, political attention is now devoted to building the policy architecture to ensure that the green transition becomes a tool for boosting Europe's prosperity, security, and ability to compete. This is essential if the EU is not just to maintain, but also to reinforce its climate ambition for the Union and its international climate leadership in an increasingly challenging environment. When I speak of an increasingly challenging environment, I mean both at home and abroad. Abroad, I'll skip that because Peter already highlighted that. Ukraine, Trump in the White House, ongoing Russian hybrid provocations against EU and NATO members. But what he did not mention, not sure whether he's still here, but then I'll write him an email. You're there. Oh, good. Excellent. That's what is happening at home. Because we see that in many member states, take France, for instance, well, you have this profound political divisions. We have right-wing parties like the AfD in Germany. Well, they found out the climate issue is really an excellent issue to get more votes, almost as good as migration and anti-vote. So, indeed, at a time when focus has turned to Europe's ability to compete and also simplify, we need a discussion of which tools the EU has developed as we gaze into 2040 and we begin to look at how to build the future of the EU's climate policy architecture. This will be the focus throughout the day. How can the EU reinforce its climate ambition and policy while improving its security, ability to compete and prosperity in a political landscape characterized by increasing volatility? With the Danish EU presidency underway, the time and the venue for this conference could hardly be more appropriate. CBS has strongholds in climate, business and prosperity, probably also other issues. But Peter, the name of the hall that we're in, Owen Hall, I'm not sure that this is so green. It sounds a little bit too fossil. But since I live just around the corner, literally on campus, where Royal Copenhagen used to make porcelain, indeed I look at the chimney every day. Well, I guess I cannot really criticize you for that either. With that, I'd like to introduce the program for today's discussion. We'll start by hearing from Poland's Deputy Minister for Climate and Energy, Krzysztof Bolester. We will then have a keynote and a Q&A with Denmark's Minister for Climate, Energy and Utilities, Lars Aagaard. Following these opening remarks, we'll go into a high-level panel with leading climate experts, advocates and business leaders working at the forefront of the green transition. And they'll be sharing their perspectives on the EU's future climate policy and energy architecture. Following the high-level panel, we'll have a coffee break, and after that break, we'll move to science and policy sessions, where I'll hand over the moderations to my colleagues at CONCITO, IEP, Ecologic, and think tank EUROPA. But before that, and now it gets really boring, I have a brief bit of housekeeping to get out of the way. When you registered for this conference, you also registered for 2 science and policy sessions. And here the German part of me sort of really comes into action. Ordnung muss sein. So please go to the science and policy session you have signed up for, as the assigned rooms have been allocated based on your stated preferences. When we wrap up the first part of the plenary program, I'll tell you where each science and policy session will be held, so please listen carefully. And after the science and policy sessions, we come back for a keynote with the European Commissioner for Energy and Housing, Dan Jørgensen, before we get to wine and networking, or maybe that should have been networking and wine.